Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of How's It Going? My name is Leo Young, and this week we're going to be talking about the state of real estate again. So this time, I'd like to review the market data in a little bit more detail, just so you all can see what's going on beyond the headlines. So, just as a reminder to you all the information covered on this show is for informational purposes only. So, talk to the appropriate professional before making your own decision. And for today's guest, he is a friend and fellow Coldwell Becker agent, and he takes a lot more of an analytical approach to real estate. And he has an MBA from MIT. So please welcome Taylor Yates. Hey, Taylor.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, man. Keep him busy, which is good in our line of work, right?
Definitely. Good to have you on.
Yeah. No, thank you. It's a pleasure to be on. So thanks so much for inviting me.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So just did I miss anything on the introduction? Would you like to tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
No, I mean, you got the gist of it. So I guess other than that, I went to MIT. Like I spent 10 years in corporate America before I made the transition to real estate. People that have worked with me have said that's definitely like reflected in my style and my approach to how we help them find houses or help them sell their houses.
That's awesome. So just real quick before we move on, what's made you transition from corporate America to real estate?
Yeah, so there were a couple of big things. So in my last job, I helped a business unit grow in a really significant way. I felt that I had the skills that I needed to go out and do something on my own, but there was a caveat. I really wanted to stay in a client service, client facing role because
Mhm.
that was my favorite part of my job was that element of service, like helping somebody navigate something really complicated and
Right.
ambiguous. My family's been in the business for a long time, so it was a pretty easy transition into this field.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So would you mind? So as you all know, the viewers back at home, every week we have a charity that you can donate to. If you get value out of today's episode, or if you just feel like donating, please do. Taylor, would you mind introducing the charity of the episode?
Yeah, of course. So one of my favorite local charities is the International Institute of New England.
Mhm.
They help refugees and immigrants resettle in the Boston area. Um, I think it's for me it really resonates because these are folks who are really on the margin and really need a lot of help getting their feet back underneath them. And
Mhm.
International Institute of New England does a really great job of that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And Boston, of all cities, is city of immigrants, right?
Yeah.
Port
Yeah.
city. Everyone came here to start a new life.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay, so that's great. I'll put a link down in the video for y'all to donate to that show. I mean, to that charity. And yeah, so without further ado, let's jump into the questions. Let's see how it's going in real estate. So, Taylor, can you tell me just briefly how is it going in your world? How has it been affected by the things going on currently?
Yeah, so there's a couple of big changes that have happened due to the pandemic. Some of the other recent events have yet to be, or more, some of the other more recent events have yet to be baked into the market. But coronavirus, one of the things we have found is, let's say, two or like threefold, right? So number one is in this area, peak season is April through June. If you just look at the numbers, there's a dramatic spike in activity from April through June.
Mm.
Now, COVID caused a shutdown in Massachusetts in like mid-March, right? So that spike has been definitely flatter. And a lot of people are theorizing that not only is it going to be flatter, but it's also going to be longer. That maybe we won't have this one big crush for the year for buying and selling houses, but rather it's going to be spread out over 4 to 6 months instead.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. Spring market has been the dynamics of spring market have been dramatically changed.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Two, a lack of open houses has really changed how we do business, right? In particular, how you serve each client, because every agent who's doing good client management is doing some sort of mix between private showings and advising them on open house they should go to, right? Just because there's no way to really manage logistics. Otherwise, COVID has really like pushed us to get creative about how are we
Right.
going to serve clients and find the time to serve everybody
Mhm.
that needs help, right? So those have been like the big two. The third, and we'll kind of get into this, the amount of options that you have to buy is significantly lower than the same time last year.
Mhm.
Uh, and it's also starting to have some impact on pricing as well. So I'm sure we can talk about that a little bit more later, but it's
Mhm.
certainly something to be aware of.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it's certainly an interesting time to say the least, and a lot of people have been affected across the board.
Mhm.
And so me doing these interviews these past few weeks, it's always been interesting to see how different industries have been affected by COVID and how they're sort of adapting to face the new reality and to thrive under the current condition.
Yeah.
Um, so what have you been doing to sort of adapt yourself and thrive right now?
Yeah. So there have been a couple big things. For us internally, it has really forced us to review how we operate, right, and who does what. We're fortunate in that we spend a lot of the off season figuring out how can we be better next season, and that over the years of our team existing has really built us to be able to absorb a shock like this. So we're finding um, I've at least found that things haven't quite slipped through the cracks. There's some days where I'm like up way past the time I like to go to bed, but like
Yeah,
things are getting done, which is really important because again, the reason that we're all in this is to serve clients.
right. Definitely. Okay, so that's good. Now, just in terms of the trends that you were mentioning earlier, um, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Like, what other trends are you seeing right now?
Um, you want anecdotally or analytically?
Why not both?
All right, yeah. So totally. What's been interesting to me is that a lot of people have been asking me about like, hey, is now a good time to get like a good deal, right? Is this dragging down prices on what I want to get? I have found actually that over the last couple of months, my leverage to get a discount off of list price has been squeezed relative to where it was in the first 3 months of the year.
Mhm.
Now, you know, part of that is because like what my clients want is the stuff that's still competitive, right? Things that are updated, close to transit, or like popular towns or neighborhoods. Those things are still competitive, and I haven't really seen any drop yet in terms of what I'm able to squeeze out of sellers. Um,
Mhm.
Now, analytically, I can show you a few charts that I think will probably help illustrate this. So why
Yeah,
don't I
let's do it.
share my screen here? So first, I'm going to show you two charts that I think are really important to understand the market.
Okay.
So this is the Caldwell Banker May 2020 report on Boston condos.
Hmm.
So this is going to look a lot like what people are familiar with or what they're hearing about on the news. That COVID is basically dragging the entire market down,
Hmm.
right? So uh, to me, the most dramatic thing has been the number of new listings relative to last year. So down 21% is like a pretty significant jump. It was even a pretty significant drop. It
Yeah.
was even bigger in April. Um, and so what I think what I think happened is that a lot of people just got scared, right? So basically from like April into the first 2 weeks of May, it
Hmm.
really wasn't clear what was going to happen. Like, was it, no, people felt like the world was ending. So a lot of people said, hey, I'm going to stay on the sidelines and see what happens from there.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some wisdom to that because the number of sales also dropped by half, right?
Right. Makes
Median
sense.
sales, yeah, and the median sales price dropped by 7.5%. Like this is, these numbers kind of like reflect what you hear about in the news. But there's
Mm-hmm.
one really important piece of context here, and that is the absorption rate. So in real estate, we talk about the absorption rate as the kind of like the balance of power between buyers and sellers. Rule of thumb is that an absorption rate of 6 or above is a buyer's market, and absorption rate of 6 or below is a seller's market. And what the absorption rate really is, it's just an estimate of how many months of supply there are. So, if we have enough houses to sell for the next, 3 months, then we have an absorption rate of 3.
Right.
Now, here's the thing. You'll see the spike in May. We jumped from like 3 to 3.5, but we're still well below 6, right? We are still well into seller's market territory, and we're even below where we were back in June of 2019. June
Yeah.
of 2019 wasn't a particularly special month or like a bad month.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, yes, we are seeing a little bit of the impacts of COVID, but in the broader context of what's going on in Boston, our fundamentals are still overwhelming what's going on in the macro economy. So, incomes are rising, the population's growing, the housing stock's not growing fast enough to keep up. So I think that's why you see the things that I was describing earlier of I feel like my clients are still paying pretty high relative to list given what's
Right.
going on, even though there might be like broader market drops. And that to me is probably because the first places to get impacted by stuff like this are the stuff that's more on the margin, right? The more
Mm-hmm.
speculative stuff, the neighborhoods that are not quite established. Those are, those are usually the first to go.
Mm-hmm.
Look at like even what happened in like the Boston housing market back in 2008, which was a complete falling out of the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the like our we experience that more as like a plateau than a valley.
Right.
And so I think the similar thing is going on here where, you know, yes, was May like a great month? No, it was not a great month,
Mm-hmm.
but we still have some pretty strong fundamentals in Boston. And that
Yeah.
pulls like a broader point of, and I tell all my clients this, when you ask, is now a good time to buy or sell? I tell them, look, it's like trading stocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you try to market time in the stock market, most people are going to fail, right? You're just not going to be good at it, and you're going to lose more money than if you just bought index funds.
Right.
Housing is the same way. Like for most people, you're looking to buy this house for like the next 5 years. And if you get it, if you do that, then buy based on fundamentals. Like, does it fit your needs, right? Does it fit your needs for the next 5 years? Does it fit your budget? If you do those things, then it doesn't really matter what the ups and downs of one month to next are.
Definitely. And what was that saying? I think Warren Buffett said this, right? So time in the market beats timing the market. Is that what
Yeah.
he said?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And
Yeah.
it's true for stocks, but even more true for real estate.
Yeah.
Um, and just people in general hold on to real estate a lot longer than they do stocks.
Yeah. True. It's a much less liquid asset. It's much harder to buy and sell, right? Um, so you have to be buying based on fundamentals, not based on the headlines.
Hmm. And now, speaking of fundamentals, Taylor, so you mentioned that some of the important things were like a proximity to a bus stop or something like that.
Mhm.
So I read something the other day saying that now millennial home buyers, because they're entering the market in bigger numbers, they're starting to value things like not so much schools, but proximity to like dog parks.
Yeah.
Have you
Yeah.
heard about that?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Um, Yeah, public green space, again, COVID aside, public green space has been a big driver for young buyers, right? Because if you're
Hmm.
going to live in a condo with no yard, that doesn't mean you don't want to be outside. It just means, you're willing to settle for something being nearby in public as opposed to out your front door in
Hmm.
private.
Right. Definitely. And now, just curious too. So something else I've been seeing is that because of what's going on right now, because of the coronavirus and the protests that are going on, some people are like a little bit put off with living in the city because they're like, I want to be away from this. For me personally, I'm fortunate to be in a little suburban home. I just got a roof, like regular stuff, not in a building, not anything. I'm pretty sheltered away from all of this, which I'm really thankful for. But are you seeing sort of shifts in like people's tastes, saying like, "Hey, Taylor, I want to move out to the burbs."
Yeah, man, that's like the $1 million question, right?
Yeah.
So here's the way, people talk about like, is COVID the death of like the city, right? And to me, when I meet like a 22-year-old college graduate that says to me like, hey, I don't want to rent an apartment in Southie. I want to rent an apartment in like Wellesley. Like then I'll call it. Then I'll say, yeah, urbanization's over.
Right.
um, the people that I do see that are factoring this in are people who are kind of, there's like a life stage that's several years long
Mhm.
where people basically make that, like a lot of people make that move from the city to the suburbs. You
Mhm.
know, let's say it's roughly like 30 to 35 people who are married and maybe have one kid, or they got like a second on the way, like people in that kind of life stage that are on that bubble. I see more of them just like taking the plunge, right? So I've met people that are maybe like at that age but not in that family structure that are saying, hey, I just want to get out of the city. Like I've done it, I've been in the city for the last 10 years. I got what I wanted out of it. Now I want to put down roots somewhere, and I was going to do it in a couple years, but maybe now I'll just do it this year.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Um, and just to backtrack a little bit, so we were talking about just sort of the absorption rate and how it's a lot easier for a home seller to potentially sell their home if it's competitive. I
Mhm.
mean, like bad product will not sell no matter where, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, for the right price, right? Anything will sell
yeah,
for a dollar.
that's true. That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Um, so on the other hand, what would you say is um, I guess the climate for buyers? Is it a good time to buy? Can you speak a little bit on that?
Yeah. I mean, again, I come back to fundamentals, right? Like, so is it a good time to buy? Um, it's really like, is it a good time for you to buy, right? Have you
Mhm.
saved up a down payment, right? Do you feel do you feel pretty secure in your job? Um, is like your apartment, are you at a life stage where you care more about the kind of place that you live in, right? I mean, I think you and I have both lived in like
Yeah.
dumpy apartments when we graduated from college, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
like, and I didn't care. I didn't care when I was like 22. I definitely care now.
Hmm.
Uh, so stuff like that where it's that's what I always bring it back to is, does it make sense for you, not like does it, because there's no, again, like you're not going to be very successful if you try and market time.
Right. Definitely. Well said. So let's sort of bring it back up to the surface level a little bit.
Hmm.
Just a fun question. Taylor, can you tell me maybe like the best advice that you've been given just in your career?
Oh man, like in life or
In life, in your career, wherever. Something that stuck out to you.
oh man. um so at least in my line of work, or in our line of work, um client work always comes first, right?
Mhm.
So, to get through a given day, you have to do like a lot of different things. Some of it directly serves a client, and you know, some of it directly serves a client, some of it more like serves like your back office, some of it is more like prospecting, and you have to always put that first category first before you do anything else. Like if you're not serving the people who are paying you to serve them, then you're never going to be successful.
Definitely. And who told you that? Was that Ken?
Oh, no, that was my team lead, but yeah, but Ken, I'm sure would echo the same thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Do your viewers know who Ken Tutunjian is?
I don't think so. He's the for those of you who don't know, Ken Tutunjian is the manager of the Coldwell Banker Back Bay office.
Yeah, one of the biggest offices at Caldwell Banker,
Yeah,
which is
it's
a
a
big
great
deal.
place.
Yeah.
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 Um, so that's great. I mean, service is something that's echoed now more than ever. I spoke about this too with someone else. So nowadays, us sort of millennials care a lot more about service than the previous generation. The previous generations, like, okay, like, here you go, take it or leave it. But we're like, no, like, I'm going to leave a Yelp review. I'm going to tell my friends about it. I'm going to search online before talking to anybody.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I think the broker role has changed a lot over like the
mm,
last 30 years. Like it used to be that you're just an answering machine, right?
right.
So the information was so opaque, it was so hard to even know what was like even for sale,
Hmm.
that's why you worked with the brokers. You said, hey, what are the houses that are for sale? And a broker could create value just by giving you literally a
Right.
stack of paper with all the MLS listings. And
Yeah.
now what people need is more of like synthesis, navigating ambiguity, right? Like how much should I like this place, how much should I pay for it? Hey, this came up in inspection, is that a deal breaker, right?
Hmm.
And I feel like now I spend a lot more of my time answering those kinds of questions than
Hmm.
um, just like simple information grabs.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And yeah, it wasn't too long ago that the MLS. So for those of you that don't know what it is, it's just a database of information for real estate. So like what houses are on the market, what's available to rent. These, as Taylor said, used to be a thick book that was sent to different brokerage offices, and you
Yeah.
you
Every
literally had
morning.
to phone in. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. It was like crazy. It was like getting a phone book delivered every day.
yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, so sort of summarizing what we've been through, what we discussed today, because we're running out of time. So we sort of spoke about what we've been seeing in the current market, and we sort of discussed what it means to sort of the Boston and greater Boston market in general. And from what we see, yes, there was that initial fear, but once people sort of took a deep breath, they're like, oh, wait, Boston is still a great place to live in, bunch of great schools. So it still works.
Yeah.
And we covered some data to just show that, I mean, May was pretty much the same level of market activity as last June, right? Is what you said?
Yeah. Well, the absorption rate was about the
Yeah.
same as last June,
Right.
which is a completely
Exactly.
remarkable month in real
Yeah.
estate.
Yeah. But what it comes down to is really asking yourself, like, hey, is this the right time to buy a house? Is this the right time to sell my house? And because real estate is really local in nature, so you have to ask yourself that question and sort of plan it out, and not just follow the headline saying, "Oh my God, the sky's falling," or something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, so that's great. And for those of you, oh, just a reminder too. So for those of you that learned something cool today, that feel compelled to, please donate to the International Institute of New England, the charity of the week, helping support immigrants get off their feet. I will put the link down below. And for those of you looking to buy or sell real estate in Boston, Taylor, would you mind sharing your contact?
Yeah, sure. It's just Taylor at yatesboston.com.
How do you spell that? Oh, no. Oh, I'll put it in the link down below. It's all good.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
spelled like it sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your website too. It's yatesboston.com.
Yeah. Yeah. You can just type in yatesboston.com.
Perfect. So I think we've run out of time, Taylor. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I mean, great job putting this series together, Leo.
Thank you.
I'm very impressed by your moderation skills. So
Hmm.
I'm very impressed by the initiative you're taking to put this
Yeah,
information.
definitely. Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you, and good seeing your face again.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
All right.
stay healthy.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you all back at home for tuning in, and I will see you next week.
All
See you,
right.
Taylor.
See you, Leo.